where most of her work focused on lobbying against anti-immigrant bills on a state and national level. Berenice began her career as an organizer at the age of 16 when Georgia faced the harsh anti-immigrant bill HB 87 and helped to organize farm workers in South Georgia advocating for safer work conditions and fair wages. She is passionate about defending the legal and civil rights of marginalized groups of people who face social, linguistic, and economic barriers in the South. We are so very honored and welcome Ms. Rodriguez to the Dunwoody campus, we look forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much. That sounds way better when other people say it. But thanks everyone for being here, either in person or online. Again, my name is Berenice Rodriguez. I work at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. I am currently the Civic Engagement and Organizing Director. The organization started on around 2010. We are a nonpartisan 501c3. We're not affiliated with any party or any candidate off election period and on election period at all. Our organization is located in Norcross, Georgia, so pretty close to here. And also we do have 4 different departments in the whole organization. It is the litigation department, the legal department, the policy department, and the department that I'm currently in, the Civic Engagement and Organizing department. I'm proud to say that I've been part of all of the all of the departments through my trajectory at the organization, except for the litigation department. But right now, we're ramping up our efforts in the voting world, voting registration, voter protection, voter elections, voter education in the state. We're focusing on the municipal elections coming up this fall. Right now, we're registering people to vote. We are focusing on 6 different cities and over 3 different counties in the state. Those are Gwinnett County, DeKalb County, and Clayton County. Now, those counties weren't randomly chosen. I strategically chose those specific counties and cities because they do have high amounts of immigrant populations or individuals who are limited English proficiency, who have LEP. So therefore, we do like to go into those communities and try to educate individuals on the voting election process and whether or not they are registered to vote. A lot of those individuals may face those language barriers, which is why our team of canvassers, which is about 10 to 15 canvassers, they all speak a different language other than English. Now, canvassers are part-time employees of the organization. They can work from 15 to 30 hours a week. Those are paid positions, and they're mostly college students. So it's really great to see how college students are involved in the whole process, and they can collaborate with our organization to educate their own communities in regards to the elections coming up. Again, we are focusing on the municipal elections coming up this fall. While trying to navigate the new Senate Bill 202, SB 202, that went into effect of March of 2021. Our litigation department at our organization did file a lawsuit against parts of the bill, and that was filed in April of 2021. SB 202 was implemented by the Secretary of State, and the biggest changes of SB 202 were the absentee ballot procedures. There was a huge influx of absentee ballots in the last general elections. And the reason why there was because of the pandemic. A lot of people were scared to go in person. A lot of people were intimidated to stand in long lines near other people. Therefore, a lot of people opted out and used the absentee ballot system. With the huge influx of absentee ballots, that led the Secretary of State of making the decision to implement, and the governor to implement this new law, SB 202. Now, it really doesn't get rid of absentee voting, but it does create a lot more restrictions. The reason why we filed a lawsuit against SB 202 was because out of all of the racial groups breakdown of voters in the states, Asian Americans are the group of people that uses absentee ballot voting the most. Therefore, we file a lawsuit against the Secretary of State in regards to making it seem as if they were targeting specific racial groups. Yeah, you can read more about the lawsuit. It's public knowledge, and it's located on our website. You can also Google it. It's called Asian Americans Advancing Justice versus Raffensperger, which is the Secretary of State. Now, as far as the changes goes, SB 202 really delays the time frame in which counties start sending those absentee ballots out to the public. It's a 3-week delay on that. It also creates the deadline for submitting your absentee ballot is a lot less than it used to be. It used to be 180 days. Now it's cut down to about 78. So that's cutting the time frame to about half. Another thing that it created that no one could handle absentee ballots other than yourself, your spouse, or direct family member, or the mailman. It used to be where organizations were able to request and help individuals with their absentee ballots because of language barriers, but now it will create a misdemeanor if anybody would try to do that. Another thing that it has created, which is a positive thing in a way, it did create the online portal in which people can request their absentee ballots. However, the online portal is only in English, which is a huge barrier to those individuals or voters that are not English proficient. So that really eradicates the accessibility to the online request portal, because there's only a certain amount of individuals can do the requesting. Those are the main issues with SB 202. Another big component that we used to play a part in was we would provide food and water or snacks to individuals waiting in line, waiting to go cast their vote at polling locations. This was sort of to help with the issue of long waiting periods and voters being turned away, or voters just getting tired of waiting in those long lines. However, we can no longer do that anymore. So voters will have to stay in long lines. If there are long lines, even if they're like hungry or thirsty, they will lose their spot. So those are the main problematic components to SB 202 that we're constantly fighting because we still have the pending lawsuit. Now, as far as going a little bit back, as far as our efforts during the municipal election, we are canvassing. Our group of canvassers, again, they're mostly college students. They are canvassing in 6 different cities across the state. We're also having mobile voter registration drives. We've already went to Savannah twice, and we've also, this past weekend, they went to Athens and Augusta, and in 2 weeks, they will be going to Macon and Warner Robins. Again, as an effort to register as many people to vote as possible. While we're trying to register people to vote, we're also facing a lot of voter purges. One of the most recent voter purge was that about 18 to 20,000 individuals or registered voters were sent a letter in English in regards to their voter registration getting canceled. And the reason is because they've been inactive in the last 2 election periods. Therefore, a lot of these individuals received this notification via snail mail. A lot of people have moved, so maybe they haven't received that letter. Maybe they will try to go vote in the next election and will face the harsh truth that their voter registration is actually inactive. And also, apart from those notifications being sent via snail mail, they're also only in English, which is a huge disadvantage to anyone who does not speak English or read English or understands English. So as an organization, we were able to get a list of those individuals that were receiving the voter purge letters, specifically Asian Americans and Latinx individuals, and we were able to make those calls and text every single one of those callers, which were not like 10 people. It was a lot of people. So we definitely were on the phones and texting for about a couple of days. So again, our canvassers and our staff members were involved in that whole process. A lot of individuals did move out of state, which was fine. But a lot of individuals again did not speak English and did face a language barrier when reading that letter. They didn't know what to do with that letter. So we were able to help individuals and explain to them and guide them through keeping their voter registration status active. So as we have huge efforts, or we make huge efforts to register people to vote, there's still voter purges going against those individuals who we probably already registered to vote. So it's kind of a game, a really, really not fun game. Just to put it more in perspective, and because we are an Asian American based organization, I only know the numbers of Asian American voters by heart. And just to put it again into perspective, in 2012, there was about 40,000 Asian Americans that voted in the election. Again, 40,000 in the state of Georgia. And then in 2016, there was about 65,000 Asian Americans that voted in the election. Again, that was about a 25,000 increase, which was great. Okay, that was 2016. Now in the last election, 2020, there was 208,000 Asian Americans that voted in the state of Georgia. You're talking about quadrupling the numbers of Asian Americans that ended up going to vote in the last elections. To that extent is really about the voters are there, the people are there. But I think if we push people and we make people understand the importance of the elections, and sort of the power in their vote, people will go out and vote. I mean, 208,000 Asian American voters is a lot of people. And that is not to undermine the efforts of the nonprofit organizations out there moving the Latinx vote and the Black vote, because there was definitely a lot of organizations constantly out in the field, and during a very scary time for health purposes during the pandemic. During the pandemic, we were forced to be really, really creative to how we were out in the field. We came up with QR codes that link people to the voter registration page, the state's voter registration page. And the QR codes were put on stickers, like labels, on hand sanitizers. So hand sanitizers were really, really low at one point. People were fighting in the stores over hand sanitizers. I think we might have bought all of the hand sanitizers. Maybe we were the reason why. But anyways, we bought a lot of hand sanitizers, and we put on the labels with the QR codes with important dates and important QR codes in regards to your voter registration. So we were able to pass those things out, and those went out like hot pancakes because everybody wanted a hand sanitizer. But I'm like, sir, but please do check your voter registration status, not just take the hand sanitizer. So we were able to get really creative in that sense. We also had about, and we still do, about 80 sandwich boards with the QR codes and important deadlines for voting. Last year, they were spread out all over the state. They were outside of farmers markets, outside of restaurants, outside of grocery stores, outside of MARTA train stations. They were everywhere. And now they're still everywhere. But I think right now we're still dispersing them accordingly, because we did lose some. I don't know why would anybody steal a sandwich board, but We did lose some, but it's okay. We replaced them and we were able to disperse them again for this upcoming municipal election. So again, getting creative during the pandemic and still trying to get the community to be civically involved is a challenge, but we're constantly coming up with creative ways to address the issue. But yeah, I mean, we are always looking for interns and or canvassers to work part-time for us. So if that's anything that anybody is ever interested in, please send me an email. I was gonna say hit me up, but just send me an email. And I definitely would want to get you guys plugged in. But that really is my entire spiel. I just want to save some time to, or if you have anything else you want me to cover, I can. But also I just want to hear from you guys.
Okay, that is wonderful. Can you talk a little bit more about the upcoming election in November, and I guess about the the governor's race and the following year in 2022, and how with the pandemic and with the increasing Asian American population, as well as more Hispanic X, as well as African American young voters, how your civic engagement efforts will increase, or how they will change, or
Yeah.
focus on?
Well, like I said, right now we are focusing on the municipal elections. I do encourage everyone to go vote early if you can. Okay, first of all, register to vote if you haven't. And second of all, go vote early if you can, just to avoid long lines. And just because it's a little bit easier. Again, early voting starts October 12th and it ends October 29th. Election day is November 2nd. During the actual election day, we do have our voter registration. Well, not just election day, but during early voting as well, we do launch our voter protection operation, which basically means that we have canvassers and other volunteers go out to the polling locations within the distance that we're allotted, and talking to voters in regards to their voting experience. Like, did all the machines work? Were you able to cast your vote? Did you have any issues? Not about like what candidate they voted for. Again, it's all nonpartisan work, but more so about their experience as a voter in the state. But we are focusing only on 6 cities. And again, all of those cities either have mayor's races or city council races. And those cities are Brookhaven, Duluth, Doraville, Norcross, Decatur, and Forest Park. Because a lot of those cities do face a lot of voters that are immigrants and are also limited English proficient. So we are focusing on those 6 cities. We are publishing and distributing voter guides to community members, and those voter guides tell you all the important deadlines, how to request an absentee ballot nowadays with the new law in place, and also what candidates are running in your city. A lot of individuals have a hard time understanding why municipal elections are important. They're so little, nobody talks about them. They're not that popular, I would say. However, municipal elections, in my opinion, are like the most important elections because they're really the people that share your community with you. They're really the individuals that may live in the communities with you, and they're the ones that affect and make decisions that affect your everyday lives. So as you're driving through your neighborhood and your streets are all messed up and you're complaining about it and getting road rage, you can thank your city council and your local mayor. Like, it's really about your day-to-day life that you experience. As a student, or if you're a parent, you definitely would want to get involved in those because, again, the Board of Elections, the Board of Education also is up for election, those members. So you want to make sure that you have a say in your children's education and how that's shaped. You want to have a say in how much money that you're paying for your property is being given to public works and to parks and recreational activities that is open to the public. So again, it's really about your money. So you want to really take a part in municipal elections, as they're the ones making the decisions that really are affecting your personal life. So that's really why municipal elections matter, why you should be more than involved in municipal elections, and why you should participate in those elections. We're very excited to see how many young people are excited about voting and about their power to vote. It's really great to see newly turned 18-year-olds registering to vote and trying to be civically involved and understand their local elections. So I am very much interested in working with youth and younger people in regards to what role they want to play in the voting process, and how we as an organization can be in support of those individuals. But as far as like our plans for 2022, we do have plans, but they're not set in stone yet. I felt that after this last elections in 2020, there was a huge spotlight that was put on our organization. We were definitely recognized on a national level for our efforts that we did in the state of Georgia, and I strive to continue our great efforts and hopefully to duplicate them in 2022. But for those things to occur, I do have to plan accordingly, and I do have to check in with a lot of other organizations and groups of people working together for the same cause. So those things are in the works, but I know that we are going to need a lot of help and support. So I am definitely going to be looking to bring on a robust canvasser team to help us with those efforts. That's really all that I could say right now as far as our plans.
This is all wonderful, such great information. Another question for you. When you talked about the lawsuit challenging Senate Bill 202, what are the chances of success or failure? Is there a lot of opposition to not only the Senate bill, but to your lawsuit? And then what is the process for, again, challenging not only the state legislature, but also kind of getting people excited or really part of the process of this lawsuit?
Well, yeah, so I would say the lawsuit is not only our organization, it is other organizations and community members as well. I think the most important part is educating individuals in regards to why is the lawsuit necessary? Like, why are we doing this? How does it really target certain groups of people? I think it's educating people on that first, and then getting people to see why it should be done a little differently, and how it really affects the election process long term, and what part of the Constitution is it not abiding by. And I think breaking it down into pieces, it's really important. I think it's easy to just read over like a Senate Bill 202 and brush it off and say, okay, no big deal. I'm just going to go ahead and request my absentee ballot on the online portal. But I think it's really about understanding the point of view of others that might not be in your same position, and advocating for those who may not be able to advocate for themselves for various reasons, but specifically in this case for language barriers. And as far as the process of the bill and how a lawsuit works, I would say that our litigation department will be best to discuss that, only because I'm not in the litigation department. But all of our updates and all of our ongoing efforts are always very public, and they're published on our websites and our Instagram account. So if you do want to keep up with that and every step of the process, I would suggest that you check it out online or on social media. And as far as the likelihood, I mean, we are in the state of Georgia, and things like this are very hard to win. But I think winning in this sense is not really did you win the lawsuit, but more so you were able to put this out there as an issue, and as an issue that people should care about. And I think that's a big stride in general in the state, because I don't think there's many organizations or any organizations focusing on the targeting of Asian Americans during an election period. So I think that's still very relevant and important to know.
Another question. Is the election going to take place, or has it already taken place? I think this is related to this year's municipal.
The municipal election? No, it has not occurred. The candidates were finally finalized in many cities as of last week. Right now, the main focus should be to register to vote if you have not registered to vote. The last day to register to vote is October 2nd. So please make sure to check the voter website. I think is www.mvp.sos.ga.gov. To check that out, to check your voter registration status if you haven't. And then again, the last day is October 2nd, and then early voting starts October 12th and ends October 29th, and then election day is November 2nd. But in that meantime, you should take some time to read about the candidates that are specific to your city and your county, and casting your ballot.
Great. Before, I know we have another question. I just want to just also make sure that everyone sees that on the GSU website, that our civic engagement team has really put together a really great website with important information about how to vote, how to check if you're registered, to check who's on the ballot, to request absentee ballot, to all those kind of rules and policies about getting a voter ID, how do I check to make sure my ballot has been cast. So please make sure that you go to vote.gsu.edu, and this will have all of the important information. There's frequently asked questions, there's the deadlines, and I think this is a really helpful information site for you in terms of getting you ready for the election, making sure that you are prepared and you are able to not only to vote, but make sure, right, that you remain engaged. All right, and we also have a question here as well.
Yeah, should I come here in the, stand over here? Oh, okay. So yeah, this is kind of a multi-part question.
Mhm.
Thank you for coming out though. Thank you. Are there efforts to make people more literate about municipal elections and all candidates, such as third-party ones? Are the election rules fair for third-party candidates? Do you have any insight into this? For example, ranked choice voting, and in the news, Andrew Yang has thought of starting a third party.
Yeah, so so the first part of your question, we are looking to host candidate forums. Candidate forums are a platform for candidates to be able to speak to community members that live in their city. A lot of candidate forums do happen all the time, but there's not that many candidate forums in language. So we want to provide candidate forums in language for those candidates that want to communicate with their constituents in their language, or who may not be able to communicate with them otherwise. So that's something that we are looking to start doing right after the registration, the voter registration deadline, so after October 2nd. And again, we would reach out to all candidates, not just specific candidates. So we will definitely welcome all candidates from both political parties to be involved and participate in that. Now, as far as the second part of your question, I think, well, that's really about all of the voter education that we can offer as a nonpartisan organization. Now, to your other part of your question in regards to, I think you said the third party?
Third party.
Yeah, third party candidates. I think we do our due diligence and research in regards to like all the candidates running, and we would offer that same opportunity to all of them, not just specific ones. And I think that offers them an opportunity and offers constituents and voters the opportunity to learn about all of them and on even grounds, if that makes sense. Did I answer all of your questions?
Yes. And what, do you have any, last thing, what about, do you have any insight in your rank facts?
Of what voting?
Rank choice voting, have you heard?
No.
Where you can rank who you want to, you can prioritize people on.
Oh, okay. I thought you said right, but you said right. Okay. We try not to show our stance in regards to like how or like what candidates. I mean, we get this question all the time in regards to like who do you guys suggest we should vote for and in what order? Wink. And I'm like, no, I can't. I can't do that. We can't do that. But I think it could be a little dangerous, like in that way, because it's easy for individuals to want to rank people based on like what they see. I think people would. I really like the idea of people just being educated on the candidates and making their decisions in that way instead of like a ranking process.
Yeah, I joined a little late, so I apologize.
It's okay. I accept your apology.
So, yeah, I'm new to the area, Korean American. I actually got naturalized in 2018, so I wasn't even eligible to vote until my first time voting was the 2020 presidential election. That was it. So, yeah, I just kind of, I was wondering, and I missed the specific kind of organization we work with, but it's a nonprofit focusing on Asian Americans, right? And voter turnout, like that kind of thing. So, yeah, are you working with, because I'm Korean, like the Korean American Association, like to get maybe data on, because there are a lot of people who are not even, like, I live in Johns Creek, and most of the people are just foreign workers, you know, who are like there for 5, 6 years, something like that, and they're, you know, absolutely not interested in elections whatsoever. And then it's probably people who, you know, like, again, like, are immigrants, right, or like small business owners, who are just, you know, longtime residents of the areas, right? So, and those people seem to really have a very specific issue-based voting preference, right? So, and I was educating them, and then if they may not have a lot of language barriers, maybe because of their long like time residency here in the U.S., or maybe they have support from the Korean American Association, something like that. I'm just wondering. So, how to take all of that like into account, that you have a bunch of, you know, Korean Americans or Asian Americans, but many of them may not be eligible to vote, and you know, like some of them may be just so fixated on one particular like presidential election. Just a huge turnout seemed to be something where people were like highly motivated because of the candidates, you know. So just something like that. And yeah, municipal elections definitely not something that, I mean, at least the Koreans I hang out with don't seem to be interested at all in local government elections, even though, as you said, they're the ones that will impact their daily lives, right? So, yeah, how to like consider those things into your strategy of getting more Asian Americans involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think my team, where there are a lot of individuals from different Asian countries who are more relatable. And we do work with other organizations, like the one that you mentioned, to reach out to very specific groups of people in a more relatable manner, not just in language, but just more so attending their events, attending the things that they do, their meetings. And again, it's all about educational efforts, trying to get people to understand the importance and the role that the candidates in the municipal elections play in your day-to-day life. Constant education, constant reminders. I think, and starting conversations. I think that's the only way to get people to understand the importance of municipals. Now, as far as how we do it, we do canvass in specific cities, specific communities, and in places where they would normally be in their everyday lives, like grocery stores, farmers markets, festivals, anything that is community centered, we would normally show up and try to talk to people. That's the idea of canvassing, talking to people and hearing them out on what their concerns are. Now, we do work on very specific issue topics, such as the most recent attempt on the critical race theory ban. A lot of individuals are very fixated on that issue. Also redistricting and how it may lead to gerrymandering. So it's very specific issues like that we do make a very specific stance on, and we work with individuals to and guide them through that civic involvement in the community. And I think individuals who may be issue focused will get involved in that way, and then we'll always bring it back to how does that really relate to municipal elections and local government. And I think people, when they start making those connections, they start to understand and want to be involved because they're so fixated or interested on very specific issue areas, but then that usually translates or makes the connection into their local elections. So it's not an easy process, but it's something that we are constantly working on and want to make things relatable, and not just relatable, but accessible. So that's why we have a lot of community organizers and canvassers who are constantly in the field talking to folks and trying to understand things from their perspective.
Great. And I just want to, I guess, piggyback on that excellent question regarding, especially, it's not just Asian American communities that have some ambivalence about, right, the local elections, which I think Ms. Rodriguez was talking about, but of course, African Americans and the Hispanic population as well, and probably even more so maybe the young generation, 18 to 25-year-olds, like this coveted electorate group. That many sometimes say, well, voting is not important, or have more important issues to talk about, like getting a job, or have more important issues about family issues, or especially COVID, right? That voting is kind of the last thing on my list. And I know that there are other organizations as well as the Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta group engaged in trying to figure out, especially through social media, right? So not necessarily going face to face with voters, but trying to engage with them digitally or virtually to get them to be much more engaged. And there's another question from our virtual audience who wants to again ask the question about international voting, or I'm sorry, the question of, can individuals who are not born here, who are not yet citizens, what are the procedures or policies or rules about them voting. How long you have to be a citizen, how do you register to vote? What is some of those practical issues you can provide us?
Yeah, so legally speaking, only US citizens can register to vote and actually vote in the election, in any elections. Even green card holders or lawful permanent residents cannot vote yet, which is why our legal department works in getting those lawful permanent residents, right, to apply for citizenship. So once you do become a citizen, once you do naturalize, then you can actually register to vote. And you could do it immediately after you receive your naturalization certificate. I've seen, so normally when you do apply to be a citizen and you go through that whole process and you have your oath ceremony, you receive your citizenship certificate, which
And the voter registration, application form.
yeah, and right in the back, it is like, make your way to that, like, table back there, and where you will find organizations like ours, trying to register everyone to vote immediately, because that's very, very important. Now, as far as like, how can someone who may not be a citizen be involved in the whole process? A lot of Board of Education and Board of Election meetings are public. I mean, all of them are public. City council meetings are public. And I think no one should be shied away from attending those meetings because of their citizenship status. Why? Because you're still a resident of that specific city. You too matter in regards to how city budget is being used for public works, for parks, schools, restaurants, etc. Therefore, you should also want to be involved in any of those meetings. And I highly encourage people to show up and still be involved. Again, this is your life, and your tax money. So I would encourage people that regardless if they're casting a vote in any upcoming election, they should still want to be involved in the process and during those any of those meetings. Yeah, because a lot of non-citizens still have US born children, and the Board of Education makes decisions on your children's education, so you should care as well. So I think as far as like who shouldn't or who should be more involved, less involved, I think everybody should be as equally involved on equal grounds, because at the end of the day, it does come back to affect you personally if you live in the specific city, regardless of your citizenship status.
No, go ahead, yeah.
Go ahead. Okay. So you clearly have a lot of organizing experience, but I feel like you touched upon this question, but I just want you to. So you touched upon the second part of this question. The first part is how have our grassroots infrastructure? How is our grassroots infrastructure compared to the 60s and 70s? Hard to answer, but and how will COVID have permanently affected grassroots movement globally and?
Yeah, I think both of those questions are very much connected. I think not even going back all the way to, what did you say, the 60s, the 70s?
60s and 70s.
Yeah, 60s. We don't even have to go that far. Like, we could just talk about 2010, 2013, 2012, like the digital era, social media era has really transformed all of grassroots organizing. Why? Because a lot of individuals or a lot of movements, you don't hear about, it's harder to hear about them unless you're on social media. Like the digital organizing world, it's a whole different ballgame, and it moves very quickly. I think if any movement is started on social media, all you got to do is put a hashtag and it will potentially go very, very viral. So I think, but just as much as things like that and the exposure on social media is a lot larger, it's really easy for individuals to be involved digitally, through Instagram. Anybody can repost. Anybody could like make a post, but I think it's a struggle as well, in getting those people involved physically, to really show up at the Board of Election meetings, Board of Education meetings. You can't learn about the candidates, or the candidates can't learn about what's affecting you just because you reposted something about, I don't like this certain candidate. Like, the candidate doesn't care. Like, he's not gonna see that. I think it's more about like, how are you gonna be, or how are you gonna make yourself present? And how are you gonna make your presence known to them? And a lot of,
Like city councils.
yeah, I mean, and as much as you could do a lot of things in social media, and you can organize a movement on social media, no problem. But I think it speaks a lot louder when you're able to do it physically. I'm talking like, especially in that time period, and just old, like 5-10 years ago, a lot of the grassroots organizing that I was involved in was in person. It was groups of students, on campus, like rallying. You can hear it. It's not just about a repost. So I think as much as individuals find it easy to be civically involved online, I would still encourage people to do it in person as well. But then it brings a whole different the whole different idea of, how do you do it during a pandemic? It's hard. It's really hard. But I think, if you take the proper safety measurements, then it could still be done, but I can't tell you it's easy. And I think, it's something that organizers across the country and across the world, I think, are like struggling with. How do you get people out and to show up, like, when you do a rally, or when you are starting a movement, the more people, the better, right? But now it's more so like, hopefully we don't bring a big crowd, because that will be a problem. So it's definitely a struggle, but I think, as things start getting better, hopefully, then, people could be more inclined to being involved, in in-person movements, and that type of organizing. Yeah, but right now, whatever makes you feel safer, I think it's what you should be doing. I think it's a person-to-person thing.
I think we'll have one last question. There's one last question regarding, I guess, again, the current atmosphere of being involved or engaged in the voting process or in elections, especially with social media. A question regarding, with all of this, I want to say, conflict that has arisen in the last, I'm going to say, in the last decade. Had Georgians become more vocal about their politicians, about the elections, about their favorite causes and topics? Or does it seem like, oh, it's just, because we have social media, it seems like people are much more engaged? I know you gave us the numbers of more Asian Americans voting, and I would suspect that that's also the case with other groups as well, African Americans and women and young people, and the Hispanic community as well. Do you think because of this climate of antagonism and conflict and polarization that people are more engaged, or are people more likely to kind of shrink back and say politics are bad, or politics are violent, or politics are conflict?
No, I think people, if this was like a Twitter topic, it would be trending. It's very, very popular. It's hot, it's attractive, to be civically involved, especially after the last elections. I think people want to be involved. I think what was once seen as just a regular old state, Georgia, is now all eyes are on the state. because it has proven to I would say the residents of Georgia have proven that voting does matter. And in whatever way you want to interpret it as, but I think like numbers, people involved, we really did our thing, as the state. And I think, people are very much, amped to continue to do, their part. But I'm not even gonna lie, organizations are tired. They're very tired after the last election period. It was a lot, you know? I think people got so fed up with people coming to their door, like asking them, like, have you registered to vote? Will you be going to go vote? Do you know where to go vote? Like, it was very
And the
aggressive.
phone calls, and the mailers.
Yeah, people
the-
were like, stop
Yeah.
calling me, stop it. Like, so I really don't want to lose that momentum, but people did get tired.
There's election fatigue or voter fatigue, and which
Yeah.
people were like, I don't want to hear
Yeah,
or see anything more
Yeah.
election related or politics related. And then you have every year you have another election. And people
Yeah,
are like,
that's
another
what-
one. Yeah.
And so I know your organization is not, but in terms of Georgia turning blue, I think one of the factors that
I think in general, like, voter involvement, like, period. Like, it was, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was just, people were not sleeping. The organizations, were working their butts off day and night, in trying to educate people, why is this important? And how to, increasing accessibility on how to go out and vote, how to cast a vote, how to register to vote, how to check your voter. It was a lot of guides, a lot of in-language guides, a lot of, in-person guides. So I think when you increase accessibility in regards to language, and information, you will notice that people will learn, and will listen, because now this is not a foreign concept that they don't know how to deal with or like work through. Like, they understand the process, and after you break that barrier, you do make great strides, regardless of the turnout of the candidates.
I think that's the time that we have today. This has been really, really informative. I have a whole page full of notes, so I've learned a lot. And I just want to remind everyone here and everyone online, please don't forget to check the vote.gsu.edu page in terms of getting more information about elections and voting and registration. Also, please, if you're interested, please make sure to check out the Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta website. We are extremely grateful for Ms. Rodriguez, and I have a little something here for her to thank
Thank
her
you.
for coming her this way. Just a little token. I also want
Thank
to
you.
remind everyone that there are many more events as I show the schedule for the rest of the week. Please do not forget to RSVP. We want to thank you again for your time and hope that you enjoyed this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.